Scotland. Woohoo!
Yeah, it's really nice when we can see from it. Kind of gives us the feel that it's an international gathering. And from what you said, weren't there 30 countries that had registered for this event?
There are. And so we have a friend from Russia here, I can see already.
India, there we go. Good job, Varsha.
Thank you so much, Trina from Canada, with a smile, because I picked on her. Thank you so much, Trina. So we have, we're almost ready. I'm going to see Rebecca. How are we doing on our live stream? Are we good to go? Wait before we, where did Rebecca go? Hello. Oh, let's see. Oh, we are thumbs up, ready to go. Okay, so there's an ice cream truck here in Scotland. We're just closing the window so we don't get a lot of that. And everyone's not salivating in the background, waiting for some ice cream. It was a sunny day here in Scotland, so they got to put out the ice cream sales while they can, right? Before it starts raining again.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so we are going to go live here to YouTube. Welcome everyone to Live from COP, Oceans and Climate. We are so excited to be able to host you today. Okay, so we are going to go live from the UN Climate Change Conference in Scotland, Glasgow, Scotland. It's been a whirlwind adventure getting everyone here. We've come in various times, various places, scrambling from different airports all over the world. We have some of our friends who are joining us from their classrooms who have been a part of the Decarbonize project, a part of the Waves of Change project in Canada, who are joining us here today to celebrate changing ocean action, climate action, youth action, and how we can all work together to learn more, educate others, and push for change. I'm so excited to welcome you today. We have some of our partners joining us. We have schools from over 30 countries have signed up. Now, I know they're not all here live in the room. Some are on YouTube, just like our friends here in Scotland have to join our YouTube stream instead of our live Zoom event. But we have some of our friends who work at CGE who are also on YouTube, and we'll be bringing those questions and comments into this meeting. So don't worry, if you're over there, feel free to ask questions. We'll get them in. And if you're here in this room, in the Zoom meeting, ask your questions in the chat, raise your hand. We would love to have you join us. Now, Terry, I'd like to welcome, do you have anything you'd like to add before we throw over to our fabulous students?
Well, I just want to say that whether we are going from coast to coast to coast in Canada, or we're going from continent to continent to continent in the planet, the oceans is something that we all share. You know what I mean? A drop of water does not stay in the Pacific forever. It goes, and the pollution also makes its way, and the animals and the vegetation and all of that, it makes its way into the air we breathe, and ultimately that's why oceans is a huge topic here at the United Nations Climate Change Conference. And as the delegates have come from well over, 140 different countries have sent delegates who are going to be here in this decolonize Waves of Change project. We have over 54 countries, and we have a small sampling of those students who are with us right now. So Sarah and I are both from Canada. And these young ladies?
Hello, I'm Sophie. I'm from Argentina, and I'm here to represent South America.
And hi, my name is Nyla. I am currently living in California.
Amazing. Now, we are joining from all over the world. But being from Canada, we wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. And we're joining you virtually today, but all of our lands that are connected, I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples that live within them. And we meet today on this virtual platform, but I want to take in a moment to say how important it is that each of the lands that we call home. And we do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relations between nations and to promote our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and cultures. From coast to coast, country to country, we acknowledge all the ancestral and unceded territory of Indigenous peoples. And within Canada, that would be the Inuit, the Métis, and all First Nations peoples who call our lands and all of our places home. So starting with that land acknowledgement. Now, I know that you each have special interests. Before we throw over to our special guests, our wonderful students who are joining us here from various countries, tell me a bit, I know Nyla, you have an amazing podcast series that you podcast, like a webcast series that you'll all need to check out. Go to her Twitter. We'll share it in the chat afterwards. But tell me about your particular interest in oceans.
Yeah, so I think that oceans is definitely a safe space for me, and I think that oceans in general are able to give so much life, and like most of our planet is made up of oceans, and it's appalling because only 2.2% of our oceans are protected, which is crazy when you think of how massive our Earth is and how much water on our Earth, and it turns out only 2.2% are protected. So yeah.
I did not know that. That is so powerful.
Yeah.
But then what's your, now, do you have a special interest, this webcast? Can you tell us a little bit about this webcast?
Yeah, so the webinar series was basically, I noticed that during COVID, a lot of us weren't really being able to get that sort of interactive kind of platform. We weren't able to get an idea and weren't able to be given an opportunity to learn. And I think that's the biggest thing, especially coming to COP26. My biggest thing right now is obviously we have to advocate, but it's about learning. And that comes from schools, that comes from education systems. And I started a webinar series, and I was able to invite professionals from around the world, and it was amazing. And I was able to invite people and audiences from around the world to tune in every month. And we did focus on oceans a few times. I talked with a NASA glaciologist who was amazing. So that was the first episode, but yeah.
Yes, and she even talked to the turtle video guy. Oh my goodness, I love that one. You know the turtle video on YouTube where they pulls that straw out and it like changed the straw conversation. Boom, you got to watch that one too. Oh my goodness, lots of amazing things Nyla's been hosting. And Sophie, tell us about your special interest in oceans.
I believe that oceans, not only kind of like what Nyla said.
Oh my goodness, lots of
part of our planet, and it amazes me how so little of it is protected, and how much garbage we throw in the ocean as if it was just a big dumpster. It's really not like that, and it's kind of makes me sad to know that it's not being that appreciated, that we don't pay much attention to it anymore. It's just another problem we have to solve. It's another thing in the background, and I just think it's very important for us to learn, to continue learning about the ocean, even though we might think we know a lot about it.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So important. Now, Scott, sorry. Welcome. You are the Director of Youth for Oceanwise, and a key part of our project here at COP, and bringing schools together across Canada, coast to coast to coast, as Terry was saying, to talk about our ocean health around Canada, but really can extend across all the sort of the oceans. And I would love to introduce you and your organization and have you talk a bit about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Sarah and Terry. Really appreciate the invite, and this is just a wonderful event. Actually, I should just start my timer just to make sure that I don't go too far over time. But yes, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Scott Bohachik. I'm the Director of Youth, as Sarah said. And I won't speak too much about Oceanwise, actually, because I think Daphne is going to do a great job of kind of explaining the conservation portfolio, and you will meet Daphne right away. But before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I live in Vancouver, where I work, play, and learn on the shared unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Peoples. So really, thank you for being here today. This is an incredibly important moment in history as we grapple with the fight against climate change. By joining your peers here today, you are demonstrating the commitment and creativity and hope that we can still minimize the impact of climate change for future generations. Now, I was recently home in my hometown of Edmonton, and I spent some time with my two nephews who are 4 years old and 2 years old. And did you know that someone born today would likely be planning to retire in 2080? That's a bit weird to think about, isn't it? You know, we have 2030 as one of the main targets for the SDGs and for the UN Decade on Ocean Science. But my nephews are 4 and 2. You know, what changes are they going to experience in their lifetimes? Can you imagine what 2080 looks like? we really don't know what 2030 will look like, do we? And so make no mistake, the next 10 years are crucial. They're absolutely crucial. But we must also remember that people born today and young people today, you, are going to face challenges that are even more complicated than what we might face right now. I also think it's important to remember in a global context that the world is home to the largest generation of young people in history, 1.8 billion people. And close to 90% of young people live in developing countries where they constitute a large proportion of the population. And connected to each other like never before, young people want and already contribute to the resilience of their communities, proposing innovative solutions, driving social progress, and inspiring political change. Young people constitute a tremendous and essential asset worth proposing innovative solutions, driving social progress, unparalleled multiplier, and inspiring political change. And so through ways people constitute a tremendous, our approach is essential asset worth proposing innovative solutions. In a Canadian context, our country has the responsibility of stewardship for the longest coastline in the world, which borders 3 oceans. However, few Canadians really understand the inextricable link between climate change, ocean health, and society. And I won't go into all the ways about why the ocean is so important in terms of regulating the Earth's climate. I think Daphne will touch upon that in her presentation. But I just wanted to emphasize the importance of your involvement in programs and opportunities and events like this for you to reflect on how perhaps you could take action in your communities, in your homes, and in your schools, and to really know that you have an incredibly important role to play in how we shape the future of fighting climate change. And at events like at COP26 and wherever you are around the world, I just want to really encourage you to work with your peers, work with your teachers, work with your community members to try and make a difference in your community. So I'll stop there. I'll hand it back to perhaps Sarah or Terry, and I'm very much looking forward to Daphne getting some airtime soon. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Scott. So we're going to pass the microphone over now to Daphne, who's going to delve a little bit deeper into the conversations that are taking place this decade that we are within, and the pivotal time to have this conversation as the world gathers to really come to grips with the futures of climate, the future of oceans, and ultimately the future of our planet. Daphne, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is near you today. Hello, my name is Daphne. I'm the online specialist with our online learning and ocean literacy team. And really, I'm an educator. I love to connect people to the ocean, no matter if they live along a coastline or if they live far inland and have never seen one before. And I think that we all see that the way that communication and education can really connect everyone. You don't have to be an educator or a teacher to do that. You just need to use your voice to tell people what you think is amazing about this planet. But I do work for Oceanwise, and I am currently right now also in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So I'd like to acknowledge that I'm also on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Peoples. And I'm really grateful that I get to live here, to educate, to live, to learn, to play on their land, and also to reflect on what's happened in the past and how we can learn from that and have a better relationship with the people whose lands we're on and the land itself. So take a moment, think about where you live and what kind of respect you would like to have for the land and water around you. But I'd love to share my screen as you think about that. Hopefully it'll pop up there in a second. Hopefully, there we go. Wonderful. But as you know, there are lots of different threats that are facing our planet and our oceans. Some of them might be anything from changes in weather, from climate change, to pollution, to an increase in fires. There's lots of different things affecting our planet. So Oceanwise, we as a not-for-profit organization, we're looking to empower the global community to become ocean-wise by increasing its understanding, wonder, and appreciation for our oceans. And we look to do that through focusing on 3 issues we see the world facing and the oceans facing. Those are climate change, ocean pollution, and overfishing. And there's lots of different projects that we're doing on 3 issues, connect those together to solve them. But it all really comes down to us, to youth and their voices, but everyone that's here working together. But today I want to connect climate change, because of course we're here for COP, to a little bit of ocean pollution and how those two might actually be more closely related than you might think. But I'm going to do a tiny bit of review here for you. I know, a pop quiz. Not really. I want us to reflect on what climate change is. So first off, we got to start with weather. What is weather? Just think to yourself, no need to share for now. Maybe verbally share with someone else in your classroom. Weather is going to be those short-term atmospheric conditions. So that's a change in, that's like the temperature it is today, at the precipitation. So is it raining? Is it snowing? Is it cloudy? Is it sunny? So what is climate? I'll give you 10 seconds again. You can chat with someone next to you. All right. Climate is going to be the average atmospheric condition that is prevailing in a given region over a long period of time. So right now in Vancouver and throughout pretty much any year in Vancouver, we get a lot of rain. It was raining this morning. It's going to rain for a couple more days. We can say that Vancouver is a rainy city because it gets lots of rain on average. But what about a change in climate or climate change? What is that? I'll give you 10 seconds. All right, hopefully you got some ideas going. Climate change is going to be a long-term change in the Earth's climate. So that can be especially a change due to an increase in hopefully you got some ideas. Atmospheric temperature, which is something that we focus on a lot today. So we're going to get those things that are happening right now to be weather, and then long-term changes over a long time scale for climate change. So I have a challenge. Can you identify our breaking news titles as either an article about weather or climate change? Let's see. Breaking news. There's a forecast for a sunny weekend. Weather reports expected high temperatures. What do you think? You can share in the chat. Do you think this is weather or climate change? Reports expected high temperatures. We're getting some ideas for weather. That's right. This is a specific spot in time. It's going to be that weather. What about this one? Breaking news. Number of large fires increasing. What do you think? Weather or climate change? You can let us know in the chat.
Climate.
Oh my goodness, there is some split decisions here in the room in Scotland, so we are eager to hear.
So some of this does depend on the time scale. I would go more towards climate change. In the case here, we have 9 out of 10 of the worst forest fire years have taken place since the year 2000. So that's a bit on that longer time scale, going more towards that climate change, that long change on a longer time scale. What about this one? 2020, hottest year ever recorded. There's a hint at the bottom there. 2020 ties 2016 for the hottest year ever recorded. So maybe that's showing a trend.
We've got a lot of maybe climate's going on in the room here.
I see some suggestions for climate change
Nodding.
too.
Yeah, some nodding.
Yeah, it can be really hard to figure out, but this one, because we're seeing multiple years in the last kind of chunk, seeing those hottest years, I'm going to go with more of that climate change versus that this day is hot. All right, here's another one. Warning, hurricane alert. So Hurricane Jerry is predicted to hit New York on Tuesday. Thankfully, that's not happening right now. Warning, hurricane alert. This one is going to be
Hurricane
more
Jerry
of
predicted
a
hitting New York on
weather
Tuesday.
event, a one-time
that's not
situation.
happening right now.
If we saw that in the past 10 years, there was a continual increase in alert. This one is going to be
Hurricane
more
Jerry
of
predicted
a
hitting New York on
weather
Tuesday.
event, a one-time
that's not
situation.
happening
So I
right
thought
now.
that was
If
a
we
bit of a
saw
fun
that
review, but really what we all hurricane alert. This one is going to be
Hurricane
more
Jerry
of
individual
a
spikes
weather
on
event. On a graph like this and a change in temperature, that could just be a change in weather. What we all over, between years.
Hurricane alert.
This one is
change
going to be
due to
more of
individual
a
spikes on
change
temperature.
on a graph like this. So we're seeing that change in temperature. We're actually gradually on a transition. And that is what people are really rallying behind, is that overall change. And that comes from many different effects on our planet, but some of those are human, some of them are human induced. There's a lot of things that we do that can harm the planet. From things like, some of them are human induced. Industry, there's a lot of things that we as well as things like plastic. And that's where we're going to connect to plastic today. So I want you to take 10 seconds to look at this image. Could be anywhere, really. That's garbage, right? That's our trash, our litter. Is there anything that pops out to you about that garbage? Feel free to share in the chat if you'd like. I am seeing people are noticing some groups nearby.
Yeah, we had a statement here. Do you want to share that again?
Oh, I just said it's gonna stay there for another 600 or so years.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to go away, right? It's just going to break into smaller and smaller chunks and maybe even become part of that soil. But it's affecting the land, it's affecting the water that's nearby, it's affecting the animals right there. And also, take a look at all these. How many times do you think these items were used before they were thrown out?
Got a lot of people guessing once.
Yeah, a lot of these are going to be single-use items. They have that one lifespan, and then they're done, and they've just gone to the landfill. So that's a big part of that plastic problem, and it's going to be a way that it connects to climate change. So real quick, 10-second brainstorm. How could plastic impact climate change? And you can share a few ideas in the chat as well.
Made out of oil,
Oh, good one. Any other ideas?
lasting damage.
Nurdles.
What's that?
They're called nurdles. They're like, so like before it's plastic, it's like a little like they're really tiny things you
Like
find
the
on the beach.
microplastics?
No, but it's like a different thing though. 'Cause it was like before. Yeah.
Oh,
Many times it's thrown into
Probably connects with the soil, or no? Plastic is really hard to recycle.
Yeah, there's lots of great connections there. I'm hearing lots around, it's going to stay in the soil, which could impact foods and crops. It's going to be produced from oil. Yeah, that plastic, it is produced from fossil fuels. And even in the production and disposal of plastics, there's a lot of carbon dioxide that is emitted. A lot of greenhouse gases are released, contributing to climate change. So I know there's a lot going on here, but just focus on this first smaller plastic bottle here for a moment. We're looking at the annual emissions from the plastic life cycle. And just from records from 2019, it's estimated that there was 0.86 gigatons of carbon dioxide emitted from plastic production and consumption and disposal. That's equivalent to about 189 coal plants working all year. So 189 coal plants would produce that much greenhouse gases. Now, that's a lot from just plastic, but on the increase in plastic use that we're seeing, by 2030, that's going to jump a bunch. And by 2050, even more so. I mean, think about how we produce and dispose of items. I'll take 10 seconds, think to yourself, you can share in the chat, how do we produce and dispose of these? Or what could we do differently?
And I think this too will change based on which country you're joining from. So I know we have friends from India here, Portugal, Russia, Canada, all over. And I think that the interesting aspect is that it changes from country to country and how we deal with these. So make sure you put in the chat what you know about your country.
Yes, and that's a really cool part, is that we can look to other countries and different communities and get ideas and support each other on how we can tackle this problem together, educate each other. But I see some great suggestions such as biodegradability. Yes, each other on how we can we can think of how biodegradable some of these alternative plastics could be. Some of them aren't easy to biodegrade. Maybe you don't have the facilities to degrade some of those biodegradable plastic alternatives. So it just kind of becomes a plastic, also taking a long time to be disposed. Yeah, we definitely, Ashritha, we can use reusable items and not single-use plastics. Definitely, there's lots of great ideas. You feel free to keep mentioning them in the chat if you'd like, but I'm gonna keep going, because I have a question for you. That is, half of the plastic in the world was created in the last, how many years do you think? 50 years? 25 years? 15, 10? Share in the chat.
Man.
Got some great guesses. A lot of
the youth, there's averaging 25 is the ones. Oh, you think 3? C? 15?
15.
Okay.
We're kind of thinking 15 or 25.
Well, there's a lot of 15s in the chat too, I
25
see.
is the ones.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
you
some
think
15s,
3?
25s, some 10s even. You know what? 15 years. The past 15 years, we've created half of the plastic. So great guesses all around. It's a bit crazy, but if you think about it, a lot of those are the demand for single-use plastics. Oceanwise has the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, where people can actually clean up their shorelines and they track what they're picking up. And that data gets collected, and we can actually use that to spark changes in laws or government action and community action. But if you take a look at the 12 most commonly found items, they're pretty much all single-use items. So they make up a huge portion of that. And you can see that increase in plastic use from the 1950s, when plastic became a lot more popular, and it's been increasing. So the World Economic Forum estimates that if growth trends continue, plastic will account for 20% of global oil product consumption by 2050. That's greenhouse gas emissions, that's fossil fuels, that's right there tied to climate change and those actions we're looking to improve upon with COP right now. And who knows what this is only up to 2015. So the last couple of years, that could have really increased as well. But I want us to take a moment and just look around you. Are you wearing anything that's made of plastic? Is there anything you're touching or using for streaming right now that's made of plastic? Feel free to share in the chat any ideas of what you see.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's made of
We're looking at our
Plastic.
chairs
Feel
here
free
in
to
this
share in the
classroom
chat
in
any
Scotland, and they are made of plastic. And we have some bottles that were in the room. I mean, it doesn't take much to look around a classroom and see evidence, even in our everyday.
Definitely. I'm seeing some suggestions of headphones, computers, water bottles.
Water bottles,
Definitely.
yep.
Even if you just look at what you're wearing. My glasses frames, they're plastic. It's plastic. My zipper, that's plastic. Parts of my cell phone, plastic. Even some of the clothing you might be wearing could be made of polyester, nylon, or other synthetic plastic fibers. So there's lots of plastic that we use. Now, is plastic inherently good or bad? Is it one or the other? It can be both. Really, if you take a look here, we've got things that can be single-use items, like those plastic straws, those plastic water bottles, and even those masks that we use. But you know what? We're in times of COVID. We also need to stay safe. And sometimes a single-use disposable mask is the safest way to protect yourself. So sometimes you need to have that. For a lot of medical equipment, we need things to be sterile and be able to be disposed of for safety. So those things, maybe we need to have single use, but a plastic straw, maybe there's an alternative for lots of people. Certain things like our keyboards, we might reuse more, or clothing, we might reuse more. So yes, it can be good, and it can even keep a lot of food safer for people to survive. But there's also those items we can avoid, those single-use items that if you have the privilege to say, I don't need that single-use item, I can have something that gets reused, that can really help bring down that number of 0.86, bring that number down, bring it into, decrease it instead of having it be on that trajectory to increase. So many great ideas in the chat. Thanks so much for sharing, everyone. All right, and yes, single-use plastics, they are a problem. Here in Canada, 40% of plastic produced is designed for immediate disposal. That's over the whole world. But in Canada, 2.68 billion plastic bags are used every year. There are cities and provinces looking to start banning that, but we are a bit behind the times. That's about 200 per individual. And there are many countries that are or have already banned that as a type of single-use plastics. But what if we thought about plastics in a different way? What if we think about those things that we need and how we can keep them having a longer lifespan? None of that single-use nonsense. What if we can have that energy go back, have more of a circle or a circular economy where that plastic gets reused in every way possible? That's a great way to use less energy producing new plastics. And that's something that we can think about in terms of where you live. What are some ways that you might be able to have your community reuse plastics or rethink the way we use it? Because those plastic bags in Canada, if they make it to the beach, they make it to a river, they're going to head to the ocean. And that doesn't mean that they stay in Canada. They can travel, as you were saying at the beginning, all around the planet. The ocean is one. There are currents moving that plastic all over. So one country is not fixing this problem. We all need to fix it together for the benefit of everyone all over the world. Think of those folks in Kenya or in Argentina or in Norway that might be getting your plastic. And many communities up in the Arctic are finding garbage from many other countries impacting them, even though they have some of the smallest communities. And these plastics, as you may or may not know, they break down from big pieces, like those plastic bags, those toys, those water bottles, into smaller and smaller pieces. We call these fragments, or in some cases, microplastics. So you can give me a thumbs up or maybe a guess in the chat if you've heard of microplastics. That's right, yeah. So nurdles are also dangerous as well. Those are what we ship kind of plastic as before they're used to be produced into items. So kind of like little beads, almost like that little chunk down there. Does anyone know though, at what size plastic is considered to be a microplastic? Do you think it's 5 nanometers, 5 millimeters, 10 millimeters? Or if you can't see it with your naked eye, you need a microscope to see it. What do you think?
5 millimeters, 5 millimeters.
Why micro?
I say deep.
For the micro.
Micro, not
Okay.
nan.
It is microplastic, so.
I'm going with the Netherlands girl, so.
We got a lot of guesses in here.
Awesome, I
but-
see
Some A's in the chats.
some for 5 millimeters, some for 5 micrometer. You know what? Oh, I pulled the wrong answer. I don't know how that happened. It's actually 5 millimeters. Sorry about that, folks. So 5 millimeters, about the size of a grain of rice, is how small it will be. So I'm sure that most of us know what a grain of rice looks like. Anything smaller than that is going to be considered a microplastic. And I want to introduce you to some of the folks with Oceanwise and the research projects we have going on to learn more about microplastics and the impacts that they can have on the ocean and humans as well. We're finding these plastics in the food that we're eating, in soils, in water, in the air around us. So it's a problem that we need to figure out and find those sources. So let's dive in with some Oceanwise researchers.
The Plastics Lab in British Columbia has been researching plastics with cutting-edge technologies to gain insight into microplastics in Canada's aquatic environments. Their discoveries are changing the ways we look at our decisions as consumers.
Hello, my name is Shreyas Patankar. I'm a research scientist at the Oceanwise Plastics Lab. We work in collaboration with Canada Department of Fisheries and Oceans at Pacific Science and Enterprise Center Lab in West Vancouver, BC. I'll walk you into the lab and you can see what the exciting research is all about. The Plastics Lab is a unit of Oceanwise that looks for science-based solutions to the problem of microplastics in our oceans. There has been some research and characterization worldwide that has pointed to a number of different streams. One of the ones that we have studied in our lab has been the path of synthetic polymer microfibers that make their way from consumer textile products. We get them in our washing machines. They shed fibers when they're in the washing machine. These fibers through the water make their way to wastewater treatment plants, which are quite good at capturing them and dealing with them properly, but they're not perfect. So we still have a large volume of microfibers entering the ocean through laundry machines.
The lab collects samples from a wide variety of water sources, municipal wastewater treatment facilities all the way to the Arctic Ocean, both of which have serious microplastic pollution.
We are able to get a good idea of how many microplastics, how many microfibers are there, what is their relative proportion to everything else in the waters. Get some hints about where they might be coming from, where they accumulate, what are the various risks associated with them.
So as we saw, our researchers are actually looking into even some of the sources being things such as our clothing as well. So those fibers from our textiles actually making their way into water. At least here in Canada, our sewer treatment plants aren't able to collect all of it. And these are some of those microplastics that we see in the ocean. So things that are breaking apart or fragmenting into smaller pieces. We did have a mention of those nurdles earlier. So those, what plastic is kind of transported in, and they are kind of what you'd imagine in like a Beanie Baby or a stuffed animal that has some weight in it. And they can be a huge problem, as well as those microbeads in some cleaning and beauty products. These are primary plastics. So they were designed to be those small, tiny plastics, whereas a secondary, they just break down into smaller ones. But the biggest issue is those small pieces that have broken down, they're ending up in our water, and that's actually getting into animals. Those small pieces are almost indistinguishable from the plankton and food sources of these animals. And that travels up the food web, all the way from that plankton getting eaten by something like some krill, getting eaten by an animal like maybe a fish, like an Arctic cod, all the way up into maybe a beluga in the Arctic. So we're seeing that even in the Arctic, where there are only small communities and way less pollution from those communities themselves. That's traveling to our plates and to humans around the world. So what can we do, really? If you're worried about microfibers, there's a lot we can do. A big thing is being aware when you're washing your clothing. Try using cold water instead of warm or hot water when washing your clothes. Our researchers have found that sheds way less fibers. If you have the option of a top loading or a front loading washing machine, use a front loading. If your community doesn't have a very good water treatment facility, or maybe they're not aware of microfibers, maybe communicate with them. Say, hey, did you know that this is a problem around the world? And there's so many other ways, even just saying no to fast fashion. You can raise your hand or you can whisper to someone next to you what you think fast fashion is. Give you a few seconds. So those are those items. Yeah, they're fast fashion those is trends, those quick trends. Instead of having maybe 2 seasons of clothing a year, they're going to have lots and lots and lots, maybe so every those month. Are those items. And that produces a lot of clothing really quickly. And a lot of it doesn't even get purchased or used. So it's a huge waste. And a lot of those items are made from plastic fibers, synthetic fibers like polyester and nylon. That's produced from plastic. So that is, again, part of that greenhouse gas emission problem. But there are other ways too, like washing with a microfiber filter in your washing machine. If you don't have that, like myself, you can actually do something similar to what I have here. I have a bag called a Guppy Friend that I can actually wash some of my materials in that are going to shed more fibers. And this actually collects them, so it's not going down the drain, because I'm in an apartment that I rent. I can't control what my washing situation looks like. So maybe you can do that you can do to help reduce those microfibers.
Yeah.
We're trying to think of some ideas here, what we can do.
You came up with so many good ones.
Yes.
I like what I do, for instance, the washing thing, it washes without using fabric conditioner or things, so I avoid that. And well, I have a
It sounds like there's some really great ideas. I love it. And you know what? It's a great thing to talk to folks in other countries and communities, because some countries are farther ahead in thinking through these problems than others. I know some countries do usually have filters attached to their washing machines. Canada and North America doesn't tend to have that standard. So maybe that's something you can rally behind. But you know what? It's hard for these animals to identify what is food and what is those microplastics. So they kind of just get whatever they're looking for. Do you think that you'd be able to identify what they are? Our scientists need to be able to identify which are algae and which are microfibers when they're looking at samples. So what do you think? Is this an algae or a microfiber?
Algae or
What do you guys think?
microfibers.
I think
Let's see what the chat's saying.
it's too colorful.
I think they have special light.
Yeah.
You might notice that this one is fluorescing a bit. It is
Portugal
actually
has gone with microfiber.
a
Ooh, we have
synthetic fiber.
algae.
So it's from something like a rain jacket, that nylon fiber. What about this one?
That looks like a no,
Maybe
I'll give you 2 more seconds.
People are doubting themselves. They want to say one thing, but they're like, I got tricked the last time.
Yeah. This one is actually algae. It's a very common type of green seaweed on the coast of British Columbia. All right, one more. What do we think?
Who's gonna get it?
Is that supposed to be a picture?
Oh.
Oh, we're seeing lots of microfiber suggestions in the chat. It is in fact a microfiber. So it is some polyester fiber, probably from something like a fleece jacket, which is a very high shedding material. So if you have an item like that, you don't need to get rid of it. Just be more careful when you're washing it, or see if you can have something to filter that out. There's a lot of things that we can do. But one of the things I wanted to share is there's great ways to do community science or reach out within your community to support changes. With the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, like I mentioned earlier, folks around Canada and other countries have done cleanups, picking up that litter that pollutes our environment, and at the same time recording what they're picking up. That data has been used in, as you can see, many different actions government actions around Canada, and it's continuing into the future. We're now actually branched out into the Great American Shoreline Cleanup as well. And one of the biggest projects is actually ongoing right now with the Government of Canada, banning 6 single-use plastics in Canada. So they're assessing, they use Oceanwise Shoreline Cleanup data in their assessment of what is going on and what needs to be done. So this individual action has led to the collective action of everyone's data together, creating that lasting change within our government. So some of these items are checkout bags, stir sticks, 6-pack rings, cutlery and straws, and food packaging. So those are just 6. Maybe we can get more happening. Maybe your community has lots that are happening too. But as you can see, small actions can really grow when we do them together and we educate each other and we tell others what we're doing, and they can lead to big changes. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm happy to hear some questions. If you want to ask any questions or connect with us after the fact, you can join us. You can email us at education@ocean.org, and you can find us on social media at Oceanwise or on our website at ocean.org. So thanks so much, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Daphne, for sharing all that. We've been having some great conversations here in the room because we have, I don't know, like 7 different countries going on. And it's just interesting to hear, we know our Kenyan friends that plastic bags are against the law. And there's quite a severe penalty, but then in other countries, to here in Canada, it's 200 per person per year. I mean, that just blows the mind. So thank you for helping us think about that and actions that we can take individually to make a real impact. Now, I want to turn this over to some questions, but I know we also have our friends here from Green Learning who want to say hello and introduce themselves and the work they're doing alongside Oceanwise and Taking It Global and the Center for Global Education around the Waves of Change project and really sort of coming together as a country and addressing ocean health and ocean science. So I want to throw quickly over to our friends from Green Learning. Sydney Howlett, you're joining us. So wonderful that you can join us, and please introduce yourselves and Green Learning organization.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Hello. It's so great to be here. I can feel the energy and the excitement all the way from Glasgow, which is fantastic. As mentioned, my name's Sydney, and I'm from Green Learning. We're a Canadian organization that creates free online resources about climate change, energy, and the green economy. Our mission is to engage and empower students, just like you in the room here today, to create a positive change in our world. We just launched a brand new program this year called Eco 360, transitioning to a circular economy. And sorry, just like Daphne mentioned, a circular economy is essentially where we don't produce any waste. And a big focus of this program is where we talk about plastics and plastic waste, specifically in our oceans. Now, we've gone through, thanks Daphne for taking us through the problem of plastic waste in our oceans and in our environment. And so I'm not going to get into any of that. I know there's lots that we can talk about, how it's getting into our food chain, the amount that's in our ocean and the amount that's being added daily. But really what I want to focus on is a little bit of hope or what's referred to as ocean optimism and some solutions to this problem. Because while it's great to understand the issue, we also need to look to these solutions so we can stay hopeful about our future. So one of the biggest things is taking the plastic that's already in our oceans out of the ocean. And there are some great organizations around the world that are working to do this, such as the Ocean Cleanup, who are essentially looking to capture, gather, and extract this plastic and debris from the ocean and recycle it properly. As Daphne mentioned, there are also a lot of policies, laws, and taxes being put into place in order to address the plastic problem. So you can see here, countries around the world are working together to ban things like plastic bags and single-use plastics. I know here in Canada, we're well on our way and still have a long way to go, but these policies are a great starting point for us. There are also some really innovative ideas, some really cool examples are, for example, eco bricks. So these are really sturdy bricks, actually sturdier than traditional bricks, that take non-recyclable plastics such as granola bar wrappers or food packaging, stuff it into plastic bottles, and they can actually make anything from furniture to housing and infrastructure with this. So we're kind of feeding 2 birds with 1 seed here, where we're creating really affordable housing, but also eliminating some plastic waste that's been floating around our environment or in the ocean. There are also some awesome organizations such as Green Toys in the United States that are taking plastic waste and turning it and repurposing it into completely new items. So Green Toys actually takes plastic milk jugs and turns them into toys for children, which is super, super awesome. As Daphne mentioned as well, energy, the economy is always growing and we need more and more energy to support that. And one thing we can do with plastic waste is actually take that and convert it back into energy. So as you mentioned, it originally comes from crude oil. Through a process called pyrolysis, we can break that back down and use it for energy. So taking plastic waste out of the environment and putting energy back into the economy, which is super, super awesome. Now, we already kind of talked a lot about some solutions and what things you can do. And I would say that there are 5 R's to the mindful plastic consumption that you can follow. And these are in order. Okay, so we want to start by refusing where we can. So if you don't have laws that ban single-use plastic in your country, that's okay. You can take that as a personal mission to refuse wherever possible. If you can't refuse, try and reduce. If you can't refuse or reduce, that's when we start to reuse as much as possible. So if you already have plastic in your life, try and keep it in the economy, try and keep it in your life as long as possible so it doesn't end up in a landfill. Repurpose the things that you cannot reuse. So maybe you have a plastic bottle that broke and it can't be used as a plastic bottle anymore. Can it be used as a bird feeder or something else? And our last resort is to recycle and make sure that you're recycling properly so you know where that goes, it's sorted and it's clean just to help move things along really smoothly. And I know we're kind of coming to our end here, so I will just share our website. So if you want to get in touch with us, you want to learn more about the circular economy and how we're addressing this problem of plastic waste, you can head over to www.greenlearning.ca. We'd love to hear from you and hear how you're addressing the problem of plastic waste and all the hope that we have to solve this issue collectively and together. So thank you so much. I will end it off there. I know we have some time for some questions and I will throw it back over to Sarah.
Yeah,
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sydney, for sharing. We're actually a little bit over, but I know that people are eager to ask questions, so I don't want to stop that from happening. But I do want to say we'll stay on maybe a few minutes after, but if you do have to leave because your class is over, the bell has rung, and you are now just sticking around because you love oceans and you love climate and you love Canada and doing things and being active and positive, then we will stay for a little bit longer. But first, I'd like to thank, before everyone else logs off, big thank you to Daphne and to Sydney for joining us, to Scott and to Mary and and Liam, our partners at Global and Oceanwise, as we all come together in this great new organization, sort of collaboratively addressing climate issues and ocean sciences across Canada and around the world, because these aren't problems that are just within our own countries. And we will only succeed, as we are talking about here at COP, if we learn how to work together to address them, that it's not a silo, that our oceans are all around us, and that we each need to think about how we are contributing and fighting and acting to make this change in our environments. And so, did you want to add anything else?
I just want to say very quickly in closing that there is, when we hear so much of what's going on right now, and we're going to have all these big announcements made by world leaders over the course of this week and next week, I think it's really important for us to decide, okay, what am I going to do differently? And I think that both Daphne and Sydney have gave us some really practical little things we each can do, right? You might not be able to pass legislation, but you certainly can choose to get a reusable water bottle, right? You can certainly choose to reduce and refuse and all those things you've been had. But when you hear about the big things that are going on, why don't you change that into something that's going to be small and real for you? And we heard about that so well today.
Wonderful. So if you need to log off, thank you so much for joining us today. If not, we'd love to open it up now to take a couple of questions, just sort of low key for the next minute or two that we have left of our friends that are here with us. Does anyone have a question for our ocean scientists? Oh, we have our hand raised in India. Praseeth, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. So
Okay.
they say that like barely a few maybe like to 1% or something of plastic is located in the garbage patches, which is most convenient to clean up. But what about the rest? How will you deal with the rest?
Yeah, Daphne, this might be over to you.
That is a great question. And I think it's a big one facing the world as a whole today, we are finding, unfortunately, that a lot of that plastic is actually traveling to the bottom of the ocean. So, you know, a certain amount of plastics, as they break down and get collected together in clumps with matter in the ocean as well, actually sink to the bottom, which is not great. And one of the biggest things we can do is try and turn off the tap to that plastic entering the ocean. So as we said, as it sits there, it breaks down into smaller pieces, and that's really hard to clean up. So if we can stop that continuous flow by reducing the big items getting in the ocean, that's going to be a huge first step, is reducing that before we then go clean up what is there. So great question.
Thank you.
You notice you have a friend from Argentina who's raised their hand. So
No, they haven't raised their
Oh,
hand.
okay, they're here. We have another raised hand. I just can't seem to find out. Oh, our friend from Russia. Over to you, our friend from Russia.
Hi, I'm from Russia. I'm Nicole, and I have questions. So there are a lot of responsible people, but also there are a lot of not responsible people in the world, and how to make people follow some rules for make people to clean our earth up and something like that. The plastic is part of our life. I mean, we can use something without plastic, and it's packed, I think. So, but we can use it less. But at the same time, it's really hard to do it. So how make people to follow all that?
I'll take that if that's cool. Great question, and that is a huge one. So, you know, we have all this plastic we want to reduce, but a lot of people might not think to do it on their own. There are ways that we can do that, and some of them are to, you know, write letters to, you know, your government near you, whether that's community, and say what you'd like to see. You know, if it becomes a law or a rule, people are more likely to follow it. But also you can, you know, if you have a company that has a product, so say cookies that you really like to eat, and they come in 3 different plastic packaging items, maybe you can write a letter to them and say, hey, I love your cookies, but can we reduce that amount of plastic? Can you see if there's a different innovative way that you can keep that product fresh for me? And they'll want to listen, right? We vote with our dollars to express concern that might happen. The other thing too is the more that people change their ways, the more everyone else will too, as they see how easy it is. So it could be as simple as not using a plastic top on your drink. If you aren't going to be moving around in it, you can just drink it at the top. If you go to a coffee shop, or just not needing a straw, just sip instead. There are some easy changes, but you're right. It will be hard for some people too. So it's finding those small steps that are easy to make and keep adding more. Yeah, lead by example. Exactly, Sydney.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Daphne and Sydney and our friend in Russia. Amazing. We do have to log off now. It is time. The sun has set here in Scotland. It is time for us to take some of these very sleepy but active and eager students back to the hostel. So thank you everyone for joining us live from COP. We have another event tomorrow, same time, different place, different link, but same time, same sort of channel. We'd love to see you there. We'll be talking with Climeworks and their new carbon capture technology that they've launched in Norway. We're very excited to bring that to everyone, and some youth leadership around that and how new technologies and youth are working together. So love to see you all tomorrow. Thank you to all of our partners who joined us today. It's so wonderful to have you. Have a good evening, a good morning, a good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.